My name is Sylvia Burgess, and I'm 30. I'm writing this down because if I don't, it'll keep replaying in my head. Every look, every pause, every moment where I should have known better. From the outside, my life looks stable, impressive even. I work at a large investment firm downtown, one of those buildings with marble floors and security desks that make you feel like you have to earn the right to exist there. I did earn it. I worked for years to get here. I saved enough to buy a house that finally feels safe. And I share it with my boyfriend, Daniel Mercer, 32, a lawyer who somehow manages to stay calm even when everything else is falling apart. Dan is steady in a way I'm not. When things get loud, he gets quiet. When I spiral, he anchors. For a long time, I thought I'd escaped my family's gravity just by building a life they couldn't interfere with. I was wrong. Growing up, everything revolved around my older sister, Jenna. She's 3 years older, and to my parents, she could do no wrong. If Jenna failed a class, it was because the teacher didn't understand her. If she dropped out of college, it was because college isn't for everyone. When she married a guy she met at a gas station at 19, my mom cried and called it true love. Meanwhile, I was working part-time at an office supply store, getting straight A's and planning my future like it was the only thing that could save me. Nothing I did was ever enough. I could have brought home a Nobel Prize, and my parents would have smiled politely and asked if I'd seen Jenna's new haircut. The day I got my college acceptance letter should have changed things. I had a partial scholarship to study finance, my dream. On top of that, my grandmother, my dad's mom, had left a small fund specifically for my education. It wasn't huge, but combined with the scholarship and my savings, it meant I could actually go. I remember running home, heart racing, thinking, maybe now, maybe this time. My mom was on the couch scrolling through her phone. My dad sat in his recliner watching TV. "Mom, Dad, I got in," I said, holding out the letter. My mom glanced at it for half a second. "That's nice, honey." I swallowed. "Can we talk about the college fund? Grandma's money?" My dad turned off the TV. That click still echoes in my chest. "We had to use that money for something else," he said, not looking at me. "For what?" I asked, already cold. My mom sighed like I was inconveniencing her. "Jenna's wedding is coming up. You know how expensive weddings are." I just stood there. They had taken the money my grandmother left for my education and spent it on Jenna's third wedding. Third. She was 23. I yelled. I cried. I said things I'd been holding in for years. My mom called me selfish. My dad stared at the floor like discomfort was the same thing as innocence. That night, I packed what I could fit in my car and drove to my Aunt Pat's house. Aunt Pat, my mom's sister, is the only adult in my family who's ever told the truth without apologizing for it. She took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come in." Later, I found out she'd been saving money for her son's college, but he'd died in a car accident years earlier. She offered to help me, and I accepted only if I could pay her back. I didn't want to owe anyone. I wanted to prove I could stand on my own. College was brutal. Full-time classes, long shifts at a cafe that always smelled like burnt coffee, constant fear of losing my scholarship if my GPA slipped. I lived in the library, but I finished. Graduated with honors, got hired at the investment firm, paid Aunt Pat back every cent within 2 years. That's where I met Dan. He was doing legal work for the firm, and we kept running into each other in the break room. He asked me out for coffee like it was no big deal, and somehow everything after that just worked. 8 years passed without a word from my parents. No calls, no emails. Jenna had my number and never used it. My parents sent a graduation card once, probably because Aunt Pat pushed them, but that was it. I told myself the silence meant peace. Then came last Christmas. Dan and I have a tradition. Christmas Eve at Aunt Pat's. Cinnamon rolls, movies, one present at midnight. Quiet, safe, ours. We arrived around 6. I was carrying a heavy dish of sweet potato casserole. Dan had the gifts. The moment I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. Too many coats, too many shoes. Then I heard them. My mom's laugh, my dad's voice, and Jenna, loud, confident, like she'd never left. I froze so suddenly Dan walked straight into my back. The casserole almost slipped from my hands. 8 years. And there they were, sitting in Aunt Pat's living room like nothing had happened. My mom's hair was mostly gray now. My dad looked heavier. Jenna looked exactly the same, except now she had 2 kids clinging to her legs. Kids I'd never met. Aunt Pat rushed over, her face tight with guilt. "Sylvia, I'm so sorry. They just showed up. I tried to call you." My phone was on silent in my bag. Of course it was. Dan leaned down and whispered, "We can leave." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Before I could answer, my mom spotted me. "Sylvia," she said brightly, stepping forward like she expected a hug. I stepped back so fast I bumped into Dan again. "What are you doing here?" "It's Christmas," she said, like that explained everything. I escaped to the kitchen, needing air. Dan followed without a word. Aunt Pat came in after us, wringing her hands. "They said they wanted to make things right," she whispered. "I told them surprising you wasn't a good idea." I laughed quietly. "You know my mother." I stepped out the back door without my coat. The cold hit hard, but it helped. For a second I could breathe. My mom came out behind me. No coat for me. Typical. "You'll catch cold," she said softly. I didn't look at her. "Why are you really here?" She hesitated, then sighed. "It's about Jenna." Of course it was. "She's getting divorced again," my mom said. "She needs time to rebuild, to find herself." My stomach tightened. "And that has something to do with me?" My dad joined us, wearing the same expression he'd had when he told me my college fund was gone. "You've done well," he said. "Nice house, stable relationship." And there it was. "We were thinking," my mom said quickly, "maybe you could take the kids for a while." I laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You want me to raise Jenna's kids?" "Just temporarily," my dad said. 6 months, maybe a year." Before I could respond, the door opened again. Jenna stepped out, smiling like we were old friends. The kids stood behind her, one boy around 7, one little girl clutching a worn-out stuffed rabbit. "This is Aunt Sylvia," Jenna told them casually, "and Uncle Dan." The kids stared at us, confused and silent. And in that moment, watching my parents wait expectantly and my sister smile like she'd already won, I realized something chilling. They didn't come here to apologize. They came here to hand something over, and they fully expected me to take it. After that Christmas Eve, I told myself it was over. I really believed it. I thought the shock of me saying no, of me not immediately folding the way I always had growing up, would finally register. I thought they'd leave, lick their wounds, and disappear back into the 8 years of silence where they belonged. Instead, Jenna started showing up at my house. At first, it was subtle, almost polite. She'd arrive mid-afternoon with the kids, smile too wide, and say things like, "I just wanted them to get to know their aunt." I didn't have the heart to turn Ben and Lily away, because yes, I learned their names quickly, and yes, that made everything worse. They were sweet kids, quiet, too observant for their age. Ben was 7 and already carried himself like someone used to being responsible. Lily was 5, always clutching that battered stuffed rabbit like it was the only constant in her life. When Jenna wasn't around, they relaxed, they laughed, they acted like kids. When she was, the air tightened. Then the visits changed. Jenna started coming alone. And somehow, coincidentally, it was always on days Dan worked from home. Tuesdays, Thursdays. At first, I didn't connect the dots. Dan works from home twice a week. I'm usually at the office those days. Jenna knew our schedules. She always had. I told myself I was being paranoid. I didn't want to see patterns where maybe there weren't any. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, who said something first. She's in her 70s, lives next door, and treats our street like a reality show she never misses. She caught me checking the mail one afternoon and tilted her head. "Your sister sure dresses up to visit your boyfriend," she said casually. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Oh, you know," she waved a hand. "Those little dresses, even in this cold. And she stays for hours." My stomach dropped. Suddenly, everything clicked. The timing, the way Jenna always lingered in the doorway, the texts asking if Dan was home, just in case I need legal advice. That night I asked him. Dan didn't dodge it, didn't minimize it. "I was going to tell you," he said, jaw tight. "It's been getting inappropriate." Turns out Jenna had been flirting with him for weeks, showing up in tiny outfits, leaning over his desk, touching his arm like it was accidental. Dan tried to keep things professional, partly because he's a decent human being, and partly because she was technically asking for legal advice related to custody. But the last straw, she said, "You know, if you ever get tired of the boring version, you could always upgrade to the fun sister." The boring version. Me. Dan shut it down immediately, told her she needed different legal representation and that she was not welcome in our house anymore when I wasn't home. I called Jenna the second he finished telling me. "Stay away from my boyfriend," I said flatly. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, relax," she said. "We were just having fun. You're so dramatic. Besides, it's not my fault if Dan finds me attractive. We all know I was always the pretty one." I hung up shaking. I called my parents, desperate for them to finally see her for who she was. My mom sighed. You know how Jenna gets when she's stressed. Maybe if you'd agreed to help with the kids, she wouldn't be acting out like this. That was the moment something inside me went cold. Dan suggested security cameras, said he'd seen this pattern before in custody cases, said we might need proof. I didn't want to believe him. I wanted to believe Jenna wouldn't go that far. I was wrong. The doorbell started ringing before dawn. Not a polite ring, not a single press. Over and over, loud, urgent. My heart knew something was wrong before my brain caught up. I pulled the curtain back, and there they were. Ben and Lily sitting on our front steps. No jackets, no gloves, just 2 small suitcases beside them. Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit so tightly her knuckles were white. Dan was already behind me as I opened the door. The cold hit like a slap. Aunt Sylvia, Ben said quietly, rubbing his arms. His voice sounded resigned, like he already knew not to expect much. Dan scooped Lily up immediately, warming her hands between his. I grabbed Ben's suitcase. It was too light. Then I saw the note. Ben hesitated before handing it to me, like he was bracing himself. I unfolded it. They're your problem now. I need to live my life. Jenna. My vision blurred. She left them. She actually left them. Dan's voice was tight. Get them inside, now. We documented everything. The note, the suitcases, the time, the security footage, clear as day. Jenna dropping them off at 4:30 a.m. and driving away. The kids were starving. They hadn't eaten since the night before. Dan went into full lawyer mode. CPS, police, his law partner. My parents showed up around noon, frantic. Jenna's overwhelmed, my mom said. She'll come back. This is child abandonment, Dan said calmly. It's a crime. They begged us not to report her. We're doing this by the book, he replied. Those kids deserve better. CPS arrived mid-afternoon. The social worker spoke to Ben and Lily alone. When she came back out, her face had changed. This wasn't the first time. Jenna had left them with friends before. For days. Ben had been taking care of Lily since he was 6. 6. Later that night, one of Jenna's friends cracked. She was in Las Vegas, had flown out without telling her kids goodbye. Dan filed for emergency temporary custody. CPS agreed. They didn't want the kids in the system if family could step up. At the family meeting, the social worker said something that made the room go silent. As the grandparents, you would be the first choice for placement. My parents panicked. They said they were too old, too busy, didn't have space. Dan calmly pulled out documents. Their house had 4 bedrooms. They'd just taken out a loan for a kitchen remodel. The social worker explained that refusal would be documented. Suddenly, my parents cared. They signed the papers. That night, Ben asked me quietly, Does this mean I don't have to take care of Lily anymore? I had to turn away so he wouldn't see me cry. And somewhere between exhaustion and fury, I realized this wasn't just about Jenna anymore. It was about a family finally being forced to face what they'd created. I wish I could say things calmed down after that. They didn't. They just shifted, from chaos in our living room to consequences in courtrooms, and quiet moments that hurt in ways I didn't have names for yet. Jenna didn't stay in Vegas long. Dan's firm worked with local authorities to track her down, and the truth came out fast. She wasn't living some glamorous reset life like her social media made it look. She was bouncing between cheap motels off the strip with a guy she met through online gaming. Someone she'd told she was single, rich, and completely unattached. No kids, no responsibilities. The police showed up at her motel early one morning. When they brought her back, I barely recognized her. No confidence, no swagger, just fear and anger wrapped in the same face I'd known my whole life. The charges were serious. Child abandonment, ongoing neglect, endangerment. Dan explained it in careful terms, but the message was clear. This wasn't going away. Ben and Lily went through forensic interviews with specialists trained to talk to kids about neglect. I wasn't allowed in the room, and I'm grateful for that. I don't think I could have handled hearing it directly. Ben told them everything. How he made Lily breakfast, how he checked the locks at night, how sometimes there wasn't food because their mom spent money on herself. Lily cried when they asked about meals, said she was scared of being hungry again. I had to leave the building. My parents spiraled. They called Dan repeatedly, asking if there was any way to soften things. My mom tried to frame it as mental illness. Dan shut that down. This isn't about sympathy, he said. It's about patterns. The gaming guy, turns out he was as horrified as everyone else. When he found out Jenna had kids, he contacted Dan's office himself. Sent screenshots of messages where Jenna bragged about being totally free and having no responsibilities. Jenna didn't talk to us after that. She did send me one long text. You finally got what you wanted. Everyone's paying attention to you now. You were always jealous. I didn't reply. 6 months later, the case wrapped up. Jenna took a plea deal. 18 months in state prison, possibility of parole after 12, plus 5 years of probation. She lost all parental rights. The judge didn't mince words, said her actions showed a complete disregard for her children's well-being. Something strange happened after that. My parents changed. Not magically, not completely, but enough to surprise everyone, including me. They took the parenting classes required by the court. They put Ben and Lily in therapy, set up real bedrooms, enrolled them in good schools. For the first time in my life, I watched my parents step up, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. They reached out after everything settled. My dad sent a long email apologizing for the college fund. My mom called, crying, saying she wanted a fresh start. I didn't give them one. We keep contact strictly about the kids, nothing more. Ben asked me one night if I was mad at my parents. I told him the truth, that adults sometimes fail each other, but that doesn't change how much we love him and Lily. And it doesn't. Dan and I see them every other weekend. Parks, movies, normal things kids should get to have. Jenna sent a letter from prison, full of excuses, full of self-pity. Not one word about her children. I threw it away. Some people ask if I'll ever forgive my family. Maybe forgiveness isn't always the point. Sometimes distance is. The kids are safe, they're healing. And as for me, life moves forward, quietly, steadily, on my terms.